Welcome everyone to another Tracks on Sundays. I'm Tracks and Max, and this is not quite a Raid Shadow Legends video. Um it's actually my gaming history, I guess you could call it. Just to kind of show people, where I come from, where this gaming passion came from and all that. So, it's going to be kind of long. So kick back and get yourself a drink or something if you want to hear the story. But I'm gonna start from way in the beginning. So I was born in Belgium in 1985. When I was 3 months old, my parents and I moved to San Diego, California, in the States. Um, and living there, my godfather gave me his old Macintosh when I was 3 years old. So for those who don't know, who are too young and don't know what a Macintosh is, it's basically the old Apple. And I vaguely remember playing a game on there with a mouse and like little cheese blocks, but I don't remember exactly what I was supposed to do with it, but I looked it up and apparently the game was called Mouse, which is a game from 1984. So this was my first gaming experience. Now, next up was Nintendo, and after playing it at a friend's house, I was converted, and I wanted this badly, right? My parents would have Santa bring it because they couldn't afford it. Games like Super Mario Bros., Bubble Bobble, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, those were some of the titles that I played as a small child, like 6, 7 years old. Something else that I had seen that they were playing at a friend's house, so like an older brother or something, was Dungeons and Dragons. However, my father never really bought me anything of that, or I don't know, he just didn't. I guess he didn't approve of it, or he just thought it was some trend or whatever. But the rest of the story will make it clear that there was something about that game in my brain and my head. In 1993, my grandmother was diagnosed to only have a few weeks to live. So we left the States and we arrived in Belgium on my 8th birthday to say goodbye to my grandmother, but also assist my grandfather in the process because my mother is only child and so she has no siblings that could do the job. And yeah, this way we'd be here for my grandfather. But eventually my parents decided to stay in Belgium, so we never went back. That meant that my Nintendo and all my games got sold out there because it's not compatible. The US version wasn't compatible with the EU, but I think it also just costed a lot to ship it back in the day. And yeah, my parents didn't want to do that hassle. So, however, my grandmother, before she passed away, got me a Game Boy, which was basically like a mini Nintendo. Of course, it's not as good as a Nintendo when you're that, but it was better than nothing. And I still have that Game Boy, and as far as I know, it still works. I don't use it anymore, but last time I checked, it still worked. So pretty neat. So once in Belgium, one of my neighbors had given my dad an IT job at the time, and in this job he'd get a 486. That's basically the computer that, or this was actually the chipset before Pentium, and it ran Windows. Well, actually, it ran Windows, but it was still via DOS, so you had to run MS-DOS and type win.exe if you wanted to start Windows, that kind of thing. And my dad, he upgraded it and he tuned it long after that Pentiums existed. But that old 486 eventually ran Windows 95, had a CD-ROM in the end, and had internet through a dial-up 56K modem over the phone line. People who remember that, they'll remember the good times of somebody trying to call while you're on the internet, and they would just hear this weird sound on the other end, or when you started dialing up and it made this really cringe sound that destroyed your ears just trying to get onto the internet. That era. Yeah, we were like one of the first in our neighborhood with internet back then. But on this machine, I started off by playing DOS games, classics such as Iga Walls and Golden Axe. Later, with the introduction of CD-ROM and my father installing it into the computer, games such as Warlords, Battlecry, Arcanum, and Ignition would be pushing the limits of this old 486. Somewhere around 1997, 1998, in my early teens, I would get a PlayStation when they were more affordable, so the PlayStation 1. I'd get a bunch of games like FIFA, Gran Turismo, Cool Borders 2, all kinds of games. But there was one game that really stood out to me. I didn't own it myself, but my friend had it, and that was Tekken 3. And like I probably have months worth of time, like literally months worth of time spent on that game, like thousands of hours. As a teenager, because my father didn't really upgrade the computer after the 486, he never got a Pentium desktop because his jobs always had laptops, so he had his work laptop, and I was definitely not allowed anywhere near that. So I was always playing games at my friend's house because, well, the 486 didn't really have the power to run the games that I wanted to play. Eventually, in 2002, an MMORPG called Neverwinter Nights launched, and this was basically a virtual, fast-paced Dungeons and Dragons game. So, of course, it didn't really take me long to get hooked to that. However, not owning a computer, I was always depending on my friends to let me play. So I would eventually build my own PC in school, and I played Neverwinter Nights for 8 years, long after even people had moved on to World of Warcraft, which was a big thing back then. But I was really into Neverwinter Nights, and I was really against World of Warcraft because in my head they had stolen so many ideas from Neverwinter Nights. It almost felt to me like it was a copy of it, improved. Nonetheless, it was definitely improved, but I was very stubborn, and yeah, I just loved Neverwinter Nights way more. It also had more of the realistic feel to it, and not this childish, cartoonish style that I to this day still don't really enjoy that much. That's why games like Infinite Magic Raid, for instance, or Awaken Chaos Era in the gacha genre, I can't really, just doesn't do it for me, you know. So anyway, during these years, however, a new ultra nerdy hobby had obtained my interest, namely Magic the Gathering, trading card game, or TCG for short, by the company Wizards of the Coast. I would start attending local tournaments, and that would later escalate into traveling the world to play the game at Grand Prix. And even on like normal vacations with my girlfriend, I would plan in an evening that I would go seek out the local store of wherever we were, like in the cities and stuff. I would find one evening and go play a local event there. Usually a Friday Night Magic is what it's called, or was called back in the day. I don't think they exist anymore, but yeah, I'd go play along with the locals there as a complete stranger, you know, like just one evening. And I could do a whole video about that alone probably, but a few of the highlights were, for instance, I took first place in Porto and Portugal, playing with Portuguese cards, which, you know, I can make out some of the words, but like literally not read it. Same for Cancun, Mexico. I took first place there, also with Spanish cards. In Tokyo, I played in Saito's Hareruya shop. Saito's a very well-known Magic the Gathering pro player, and he owns a huge shop in Tokyo. Well, huge, you know, for Tokyo. Anything that is as big as that is, like that, his shop is as big as like 10 other shops together. So it's very, very big, and it's always packed, as full of people playing Magic the Gathering and other card games as well. But I played there too, and I played with Japanese cards, which I absolutely can't read at all, and still managed to pick up 2 wins. I was allowed to use a little booklet to translate, but I still had like a timer, right? I wasn't allowed to take 5 minutes for every turn just to read every card and everything. It was like I could briefly look like a few seconds, and then I had to decide, right? So and I still, yeah, I managed to get two out of 3 matches there, so that was pretty cool. And then San Diego, I also went to a local store, and I lost the finals there. So and those are actually the local store adventures that I remember. But then, yeah, there's a lot of Grand Prix that we went to, and in Rimini in Italy, for instance, in 2013, I got to play against the world champion at the moment of that moment, which was Shahar Shenhar. But I made a huge misplay in one of the games, and I threw it up. Unfortunately, I threw it, so I didn't get to win. I had a shot at beating him, but I just missed it. So, but at this time, the things were changing drastically in Magic the Gathering. Grand Prix were starting to become very expensive to participate in, and the overall prizes in the tournament started to lose my interest. There was also a new online TCG by Blizzard, the same guys from Warcraft, called Hearthstone. Hearthstone was nowhere near as complicated as Magic the Gathering was, and I didn't really like it as much as Magic the Gathering, but it had one huge advantage over Magic the Gathering, which was I could play this game whenever I wanted to and wherever I wanted to, whereas opposed to the Magic the Gathering, well, you did have an online version, but it was horrible. That still exists, by the way. It's just called Magic the Gathering Online. I wouldn't advise you to ever download that. It feels like it's a was programmed in 1980 or something. So in Hearthstone, all my friends started to get hooked on that as well. So, you know, you went online into Blizzard, whatever it was called, and you could see who was all online, and you could battle your friends and battle on the ladder for ranked and all that. And soon enough, we'd start competing in tournaments. And in one of these tournaments, a friend of mine and myself were approached by a Belgium esports team called Ice Wolves, and they asked us if we didn't want to play for them. So yeah, at this point my Magic the Gathering days were kind of over, and it was full on Hearthstone. And you know, I occasionally played Magic the Gathering if friends asked me to come over and play, or yeah, some people who just kept on playing Magic the Gathering seriously would ask to play along and whatever. And sometimes we go to a store still or whatever, but not as intense as it used to be. And the Grand Prix I definitely didn't do anymore. Whilst before that I would travel like 4 times a year or so to go and do Grand Prix. So one thing I did skip during this whole explanation, so I kind of dipped into the trading card game thing, but when League of Legends came out, this was also a game that I heavily played. So from season 1 up until now, I've actually played the game. The last, I'd say, I don't know, 6 years or so, I haven't played that much. But back in the day, like season 1, season 2, season 3, season 4, probably up to season 7, 6 or 7 or so, I did play a lot, but I was just never very good at it. I only managed to get gold in season 3 or something, netting me that victorious Morgana skin. It's kind of neat, but then well, one of the reasons why I didn't play as much League was because I was doing the Hearthstone, and then I also kind of started streaming Hearthstone here and there, but it never really kicked off or anything. It was like maximum of about 35 to 40 people that would pop into my stream. But I thought at the time that was still pretty good as a nobody, really. I mean, I did get some good results and all that, but it's not like I earned a lot of money with it or anything like that. So, but in 2016, a huge bomb dropped on me, and this would be my worst addiction since Neverwinter Nights. Most gamers, they probably wouldn't even call it a game, but Niantic, a Google-owned company, would launch an AR game called Pokemon Go. Even though I wasn't huge on Pokemon, I was definitely intrigued by the concept, because I had been spending years playing League and Hearthstone at my computer, and I had very little exercise. So I decided to download it and immediately got hooked. And even my girlfriend at the time, she got hooked after a week or so. Even though she was like, I'm not going to play that silly game. And after 1 week, we were playing together, of course. I became the first level 40 of my city and 7 surrounding cities. Level 40 back then was the maximum level. And I walked an average of 3 hours per day. Average. There were days that I obviously walked more, and there were even days that I played 16 hours non-stop, just eating while playing. And during this period, whenever I was awake, my phone was on and it was running Pokemon Go, and I was doing something there. And yeah, anywhere I'd go, I'd have at least 2 phones on me and multiple power banks to make sure that I had the juice to keep on going, just because we were, you're usually in parks and whatnot, and yeah, you couldn't just go home and plug in your phone or whatever. So if you wanted to keep playing, you had to have all the stuff along, and yeah, you bring snacks and drinks and enough power banks and cables, and if it was cold, gloves and whatever, we would grind it out. And I would start a local Pokemon WhatsApp group to be able to help each other out and do raids, and actually find the raids, and be like, hey, there's a raid over here, can you come help us and whatnot. And during that period, we drove around a lot. Like, we would drive hours on end to different towns and take over gyms and do raids all over the place. And it was that part I'm kind of ashamed about, but it was just the way we did it back then. And yeah, I don't know. It was a fun time though, because we got to discover places around us that we didn't even know existed, even though we lived here for 20 years, or longer. But it all suddenly came to an end when COVID hit us, and we weren't allowed to go outside anymore. Well, at least we weren't allowed to be near other people, and I think we were also forbidden to be in parks even. And mainly, I'm a night shift worker, so my main playing time would also be at night, and we weren't allowed to go out at night. So I was kind of just, stuck at home during my weekends, awake at night while my wife and kids would be asleep. And that's when I went back and picked up a game that I'd briefly checked out during my Pokemon Go era, which was Jurassic World Alive. Now, Jurassic World Alive is actually another AR game. It's almost like a clone of Pokemon Go. The only difference is that you can actually play it from your home, whereas Pokemon Go, unless you are super lucky to live on a gym or on Pokestops or whatever, there's not really much you can do in Pokemon Go from out your home. And especially not back in the day, because there were way less spawns than there are today if you install the game. So yeah, I started to play Jurassic World Alive, and it was kind of like my fix, the fix that I needed for the AR genre, or while we waited to be allowed to go outside again, right? But the clan I joined in Jurassic World Alive had become my family during the COVID time. It's really weird, but like, they were my best friends during this period. And it's weird because, I have best friends in real life, but I just wasn't allowed to go see them. People stayed away from each other during this period, but this online event going on, like this community was the thing that, kept us sane and happy at that moment during the COVID madness. And yeah, I started to get competitive in that scene, and I started to write all kinds of tactical strategies and things for people to follow and how to build their dinosaurs, and in clan guides basically for our clanmates who are struggling to do certain things. And I'd spend hours of my days just giving explanations and whatnot. Something that I had actually already been doing in Pokemon Go, but then that was more for my WhatsApp group and the people that I raided with. I started to do online now in Jurassic World Alive, because I just enjoy it. If you have knowledge about something, I don't see the reason why you wouldn't want to share it with someone else so that they can understand it better. I mean, it's only beneficial for everyone. If you tell me a secret, I'll tell you a secret, you know? And this isn't secret, this is information, but you might know something that I don't know, and I would like to know it, you know? That's how you get better in games, is you share your knowledge. And in that moment, I didn't really realize that what I'm doing now today is kind of based off of all of that, right? After years of explaining stuff to people daily, I would have people message me, or, you know, in person while we were outside playing Pokemon Go or whatever. Hey Trax, how do I do this? Hey Trax, what is the best thing for this? What moves should I use here? Blah, blah, blah. I have been doing this for years, basically, but just now it's like maybe I should have done this earlier, you know? But anyway, the Pokemon Go kind of like lost interest in that. So I started watching a lot of YouTube, because in the weekends when I was awake during the weekends, normally I would go play Pokemon, but now I was stuck at home during COVID. And I would have like my Jurassic World right on my phone here, right? And I'd be playing this while I'm watching something on YouTube. But there was this channel called Critical Role, which basically consisted of voice actors playing live Dungeons and Dragons. And like, I don't know how, but they absorbed all of my attention. Prior to that, I had barely ever played Dungeons and Dragons in my life, and after watching them, I wanted to play a lot. I still haven't played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons in my life, but I've had a couple of one-shots here and there. But sometimes I would also just, you know, browse YouTube, and there was Raid everywhere. On ads, like almost every video that I wanted to click on, there was first a Raid ad of Death Knight doing something, like the job interview and whatever. You saw Raid ads all the time, and it took me a while before I actually decided, okay, I'm gonna download it. It was actually some influencer. It was a weird ad, because he was in the middle of cartel in Tijuana, a drugs cartel neighborhood, and staying there somewhere in a hotel, and suddenly he picks up his phone, and it goes from all serious and dangerous to, but in my free time I play Raid Shadow Legends, and he's like on his phone, and he's like, under the link down here, and if you click that, I'll get a little kickback and blah blah blah. So that's the way you can support this channel. And I liked watching that dude, so I was like, okay, you know what? I've seen some commercials, some ads of this game. Let's download it and see what it's all about. I wasn't really playing anything much at the time anyway. I was also kind of getting bored of Jurassic World, having spent, again, almost like 2 years on that game. And yeah, I didn't realize that was going to be my new addiction, right? Coming from Pokemon Go and Jurassic World, though, I luckily didn't understand what microtransactions are. And coming from those games, the ones in Raid were just like absurd to me and not appealing at all. I could not put that in my head that people would actually spend this much money for the things they had to offer, right? Like, if you would, I don't know, if you'd like pay $40 on Pokemon Go, you would have, I don't know, like maybe a month's worth or more of stuff to do with that, right? Whereas, yeah, in Raid, that's like 5 minutes of your time, I guess, unless you're buying energy, and then you could say it's a day of your time. I don't know. Yeah, it's just not appealing. But yeah, I was just a newbie in the gacha game scene. I'd never played any gacha games prior to Raid. But this did help me, you know, not spend as much on raid. I have spent on raid, but it's merely a fraction of what I spent in Pokemon Go or in Hearthstone actually as well. It's like Pokemon Go is 10 times more spent than on raid. So to just give you an idea, the first time I spent money on raid was after 4 months actually, and that was when Demytha was released, and she was a part of a fusion, and I didn't have the shards to get Demytha, so I said, hey, this is gonna probably be a good champion for some unkillable team down the line. I was, you know, 4 months in, you're still kind of new to the game, but I did realize, like, this is going to be a key piece. This is going to be a huge player. And eventually she became the best unkillable team in existence until now, at least. I mean, that's debatable, I guess, but I think the highest damage dealing teams are all the Demytha teams. So kind of proves the point, I guess. And after 5 months of playing raid, I decided, you know what, let's stream this, because I was still at home and not doing much during the weekends at night, much like now where I'm making videos. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna stream this on Twitch and see if anyone is interested in it or not. They weren't. They weren't that interested, or they just didn't really, you know me or whatever, and they didn't really hop into my streams that much. I think I got 9 viewers one time or something, and usually it was 1 or 0 people watching my stream. But, you know, I didn't care. I was just streaming since I was playing anyway. It didn't really matter to me. But the last stream I did, and that was November 2021, it was the last stream I did because my computer just blue screened. I don't know how many people were watching at that moment. I think it was only 1 or 2, so it's not that big of a deal. But I immediately decided, okay, I need if I want to do that again, I need a new computer. And I didn't have the resources to buy a new computer right that moment, so it took me a while. But in May of 2022, this year, I bought a new PC, and because in the meantime I'd been watching a lot of YouTube, and I have a background of graphic design and IT, I actually decided maybe making YouTube videos is better for me. Like, maybe I should try that before I try going back to Twitch. So yeah, May 2022, so May of this year, I bought all the hardware and accumulated the software that I needed for it, that was necessary. And the 12th of June 2022, my new channel and my first video were posted. And here we are, 6 months later. So that was my story. I mean, I hope it's not the end of the story yet, of course, but to give you some insight of the path I followed and how I got to where I am right now, why I ever decided to turn that camera on there and this microphone right here in front of me. Yeah, that's basically it. So in my early days of gaming, when I mentioned, you know, Dungeons and Dragons, and then that went to Neverwinter Nights, to Magic the Gathering, you can feel this Middle-earth, dark, evil, you vibe with elves and dwarves and orcs and whatever, you know, and I mean, Raid fits right in there, right? That's like a perfect fit somebody like myself. So that plus the fact that the game has a lot of customization in terms of builds and stuff you can do. Like, it's not too complicated, but it's also not too simple, and that makes it very appealing to me. So, yeah, that's my history in a nutshell. Hope you enjoyed it. See you later.